a supreme apex predator capable of outsmarting a woolly mammoth and conquering continents with nothing but a sharpened stick and pure instinct, suddenly drops to its knees. Covered in sweat, covered in mud, and weeping over a single, fragile blade of grass. This was not a moment of defeat. It was something far more terrifying. It was the birth of farming. In a single, catastrophic twist of fate, the fiercest hunters on earth traded the boundless freedom of the wilderness for a lifetime of back-breaking slavery to a plant. For hundreds of thousands of years, the human species lived like absolute royalty. The entire planet was a giant, open-concept buffet. There were no fences, no boundaries, and absolutely no property taxes. If the weather turned cold, the tribe simply packed up their minimal belongings and walked to a warmer valley. Life was a thrilling, adrenaline-fueled game of hide-and-seek with nature. The daily routine was remarkably simple. A few hours of wandering through pristine forests, picking delicious wild berries, tracking majestic beasts, and then complete, uninterrupted leisure. The ancient hunter-gatherers worked fewer hours than any society that followed them. They possessed bodies built like Olympic athletes, minds sharp as obsidian glass, and a diet so diverse it would make an apex predator blush. One day it was wild boar, the next it was sweet tubers, followed by fresh river fish. There was no monotony. If a particular area ran out of food, it wasn't a crisis. It was an excuse for a road trip. The world was vast, the air was clean, and human beings were the undisputed masters of everything the light touched. They did not bow to the land provided for them. It was a chaotic, dangerous, yet beautifully liberating existence where survival was an art form and freedom was absolute. Then, the ultimate disaster struck. It didn't arrive with a thunderbolt or a volcanic eruption. It arrived silently, blowing in the wind, in the form of a tiny, innocent-looking grain. Wheat. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, a profound misunderstanding occurred. Humans noticed that where seeds accidentally spilled, more plants grew. A brilliant idea began to take root in the collective human mind, an idea that would doom the species forever. Humans thought they were clever. They thought, why chase the food when we can make the food stay in one place? This was the greatest trap ever sprung in natural history. Humans believed they were domesticating the plants, but the cold, harsh reality is that the plants domesticated humans. Consider the sheer absurdity of the trade-off. Wheat did not like rocks, so humans spent their days clearing fields until their hands bled. Wheat did not like weeds, so humans spent hours under a scorching sun pulling them out. Wheat was fragile and thirsty, so humans strained their muscles carrying heavy skins of water from distant rivers to pour onto the dirt. Wheat was defenseless, so humans had to build permanent camps and stand guard day and night to protect it from rabbits, locusts, and rival tribes. The proud hunter, who once ran free across the endless horizons, was suddenly anchored to a single patch of dirt, completely at the mercy of a stubborn blade of grass. The physical toll of this new lifestyle was nothing short of an evolutionary comedy of errors. Human bodies were perfectly engineered by nature to climb trees, sprint across savannas, and leap over obstacles. They were absolutely not designed to spend 12 hours a day bent double, clearing rocks and digging irrigation ditches. Almost overnight, the archaeological record takes a dark and dramatic turn. Skeletal devastation. Human bones from the early agricultural era suddenly show a massive spike in slip discs, arthritis, fractured vertebrae, and permanent joint damage. The dental disaster. The diverse, nutrient-rich diet of the hunter-gatherer vanished, replaced by a monotonous, soul-crushing mush of boiled grain. This massive intake of carbohydrates led to the widespread arrival of tooth decay and dental abscesses. The famine trap. A hunter-gatherer laughed at localized droughts because they could just walk to a different forest. But for the farmer? If the rains failed to fall on their specific plot of land, or if a fungus rotted the harvest, the entire village simply starved to death inside their permanent mud huts. Humans had traded security for vulnerability, and physical excellence for chronic pain. The proud masters of the wild had successfully transformed themselves into the exhausted, aching caretakers of the mud. As if the physical torment wasn't enough, the social consequences of farming brought an entirely new wave of dramatic misery. Because fields produced a surplus of food, populations exploded. But this wasn't a blessing. It was a logistical nightmare. Thousands of people were suddenly crammed together into dense, permanent settlements, living side by side with their own waste and their domesticated animals. This created the perfect, catastrophic breeding ground for invisible killers. Diseases like smallpox, measles, and the flu, monsters that the scattered, mobile hunter-gatherers had rarely ever encountered, swept through these early villages like wildfire, decimating entire generations in weeks. Furthermore, the concept of surplus grain birthed the most dangerous invention of all: property. In the hunting days, no one owned a mountain or a river. But now, that patch of wheat belonged to someone. And if one village had more grain than the neighboring village, peace was over. Mass warfare was born. Tribes built massive walls, sharpened weapons not for beasts, but for each other, and organized armies to slaughter rivals over a few bushels of seed. To manage this chaos, a new class of humans emerged: rulers, warlords, and tax collectors. The average human no longer just worked to feed themselves. They worked to fill the granaries of a self-proclaimed king who sat in a stone tower, watching them sweat. Hierarchy had arrived, and equality was dead. So, was the transition from hunting to farming a magnificent leap forward, or the single greatest blunder in human history? From an evolutionary standpoint, the plants won an absolute victory. Wheat conquered the globe, forcing humans to destroy forests and reshape entire landscapes just to grow more of it. Human numbers skyrocketed, ensuring the survival of the species, but at the cost of the happiness, health, and freedom of the individual. Humanity stepped out of the vibrant, wild Eden of the hunter-gatherer and willingly walked into a self-made cage of relentless labor, social inequality, and dental agony. We traded the thrilling, unpredictable dance with nature for the guaranteed, exhausting grind of the soil. And as the early farmer wiped the sweat from their brow, looking out over an endless field of grain under a blistering sun, they must have wondered if the seed they planted was worth the freedom they so carelessly buried.